passion, and she just, you know, no mother, no grandmother, no father, no grandfather could be prouder. She was a force, just a force.
Her grandmother's grief, Sub-Lieutenant Abigail Cowborough, originally from Toronto, is dead after a Canadian military helicopter crashed off the coast of Greece. 5 other crew members missing, including a man from Guelph. Sub-Lieutenant Abigail Carborough's body has been recovered. The 23-year-old is the only Air Force member to be confirmed killed in the crash. We spoke to her grandmother about how she got the terrible news last night.
Abby has 3 brothers that still live here with their birth father. And the military arrived at their home in the evening last night. And so the elder son, Simon, called me and said, "Grandma, can we come and visit?" And I said, "Well, no, I'm sorry, Simon, you can't come and visit. Me and Grandpa are in isolation, like we haven't seen anybody." And he said, "No, Grandma, we have to come and visit." And I said, "No, I'm sorry, you can't." And he just said, Grandma, Brandy died. Brandy's dead, Abby's dead." And I just couldn't believe it. So I let them come, and we put the rest of the family on WhatsApp. I have 5 children and 12 grandchildren. Abby was the oldest of the grandchildren. So we put the rest of the family on WhatsApp and we just talked for hours.
Meanwhile, the search continues for the 5 others who were on the helicopter deemed missing. They are Master Corporal Matthew Cousins from Guelph, Captain Maxime Moran from Trois-Rivières, Quebec, Captain Kevin Hagan from Nanaimo, British Columbia, Captain Brendan Ian MacDonald from New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, and Sub-Lieutenant Matthew Pike from Truro, Nova Scotia. Salima Shivji has the latest on the victims and the rescue operation in the Mediterranean.
A search mission deep in international waters with the help of Turkish and Italian allies. The helicopter, a cyclone like this one, was part of a NATO mission to counter Russian aggression. But it was on a training exercise with 4 Canadian Air Force members and 2 from the Navy on board. Nearly done and heading back to the frigate yesterday evening when all contact was lost. The body of one of the victims has been found, 23-year-old naval engineer Abigail Cobra. A week ago, playing a tribute for the Nova Scotia shooting victims, now gone herself.
At that day, she changed her cover page on Facebook and put the Nova Scotia flag on around her neck and her face, and said that tribute was, you know, Nova Scotia proud.
The Prime Minister today promising answers and offering support to the families affected.
All of them are heroes. Each of them will leave a void that cannot be filled.
But the search is complicated, the wreckage scattered.
They're in about 3,000 meters of water in the Ionian Sea. The Standing Naval Group is doing their best to conduct the search. There's a fairly sizable debris field, and they need to search through that debris field.
An investigative team from Canada is en route to help, while the helicopter's cockpit and data recorders, both recovered, will come back here for analysis. And for now, all of the military's Cyclone chopper flights are on pause, though the fleet isn't grounded.
I don't have any concerns about the helicopter. It's performed terrifically.
As the force waits for more answers on what exactly went wrong to make this helicopter crash into the sea. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Ottawa.
A 30-year-old man is dead after being shot by a Toronto police officer near the 400 and Finch this afternoon. It happened outside a hotel and beside a police station. The Special Investigations Unit is now looking into what happened. Angelina King joins us now from the scene with more on this. So, Angelina, what is the latest?
Well, we know that Toronto police were called here about reports of a man with a gun and a knife inside of a vehicle outside of the Best Western Hotel. That hotel is just off to the left of the screen, but right beside Toronto Police's 31 Division. You can see that building just behind me, so police didn't have very far to travel when they were called. The SIU says that when officers got here, one of the officers got out of his car and the man did the same. Then there was some type of interaction, and the SIU says the police officer shot his gun multiple times, hitting the man who was pronounced dead at the scene. We were able to speak with a couple of witnesses, including one man who's at the hotel working today, actually installing shields to protect staff from COVID-19. Here's some of what he had to say.
I looked to the left, saw this guy standing there with his gun drawn, pointing downwards towards the ground. 20 seconds later, 10, 20, 30 police showed up real fast.
He says that the police officer was wearing plain clothes and he believes that he was pointing his gun at somebody on the ground behind a vehicle. Now, we also spoke with a man who says that he heard 2 gunshots from inside of the hotel.
Bang, bang, like quick, yeah. I was in my hotel room with my lady friend and I thought I heard gunshots. I didn't say anything, but we talked about it moments later. So about an hour and a half, I leave, hop in my car, but the whole area is taped off and I couldn't enter my vehicle or leave the hotel.
So this is quite the scene here. Of course, the SIU are here as well as some Toronto police officers. There's a lot of police tape here, quite a bit of activity. Part of Norfinch Drive is still blocked off. So now that the SIU has taken over the investigation, we won't be hearing any more updates from Toronto police. So going forward, information will be a little bit more sparse. Now, the SIU is called in anytime a police officer is involved in an incident that results in serious injury, death, or allegations of sexual assault, and they help determine whether criminal charges should be laid. Dwight?
Thank you, Angelina. We are hearing tonight from the family of a personal support worker who died this week after contracting COVID-19. Arlene Reed worked with the Victorian Order of Nurses in Peel. Her death comes as another long-term care home operator is facing a lawsuit. Lisa Shing has the details.
Days after her death, Arlene Reed's children are still reeling.
She was phenomenal. She was amazing.
In all aspects, like her smile lit up a room, her laugh, she was vibrant.
She treated everybody like her own kid.
The 51-year-old died at home over the weekend, the second personal support worker in the province known to have died from COVID-19. Reed was a home care worker and employed at long-term care homes in Peel Region.
Seeing my mom deteriorate in such a short period of time, it's an experience that I can't explain. And I'm just trying to figure out where do I go from here and how do I live without my mom.
In Kitchener-Waterloo, Tracy Rowley is also mourning the death of who she calls her second mom. Shirley Eggerty never married nor had children. This photo of Tracy hung in Shirley's room to remind her to be positive.
She called me her daughter. We would exchange Mother's Day gifts and cards that I would to her and Christmas gifts.
Eggerty tested positive for COVID-19 in early April. She died last week. Today, Rowley signed on to this class action lawsuit against Rivera, the company that runs the home where Eggerty lived, citing negligent care.
I didn't get to see her again. I didn't get to hug her and say how much I love you and how special you are. I don't want any other person to lose a mother, a father, a friend. This isn't the way they deserve to go out.
The lack of management oversight, the lack of training of staff, the underpayment of staff, the understaffing of homes, the profit over what I call the profit over the person motive of these long-term care operators has existed for years and years.
Rivera says it's reviewing the matter and will respond in an appropriate way at the right time, and it'll continue its efforts in caring for residents. Over the past week, the number of deaths in long-term care homes in Ontario has steadily increased from 516 to 835, a 62% jump. In Ontario, long-term care residents make up about 77% of all COVID deaths, higher than the 68% in all of Canada.
No matter if it's transferring staff from the hospitals or bringing in the military, it's all hands on deck.
But some unions are calling on the government to take over managing the homes, like in other provinces, including British Columbia. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario officially surpassed 1,000 COVID-19 deaths this week, a mark the country as a whole hit 2 weeks ago. Our team has compiled stories with what we know about some of those first 1,000 Canadian victims as the virus tracked from the West Coast to Quebec to here in Ontario. You can find it at cbcnews.ca. The province announcing new safety guidelines today for businesses that will gradually be allowed to reopen.
These guidelines will help Ontario businesses adapt to the new reality we face and keep workers and customers safe.
The guidelines will apply to sectors including manufacturing and restaurant and food service. They include ways to ensure physical distancing, such as staggering shift times for employees and using ground markings and barriers to manage traffic flow. Businesses will need to promote proper workplace sanitation, provide personal protective equipment, and enforce employee hand washing. The province is adding nearly 60 new labor inspectors to outline the new guidelines to essential workplaces and, of course, enforce emergency measures. And the weather forecast is looking good for the weekend, and that likely has many of you itching to spend some time outdoors. But how risky is it? Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley looks for the facts about outdoor transmission of COVID-19.
It's a natural human instinct, especially after 6 weeks stuck mostly indoors. But is getting outside for a walk the right thing to do in this pandemic? The message in Ontario?
You don't go to places where you think everybody else is going to go. You don't go at hours where everybody else is going to go.
Quite a different tone from British Columbia.
Please go outside. Go outside with your family.
With warmer weather arriving and COVID-19 restrictions still in place, many wonder about the risk of catching the coronavirus outdoors. There's no evidence that it's high.
The risk that somebody who is sick is spreading this virus from coughing or sneezing outside and you walk by them very quickly, even if it is within 6 feet, that risk is negligible.
In general, you just have to be sensible. So when we're talking about outside, we're not talking about sporting events with 10,000 people packed into the stands. We're talking about taking solitary walks outside in a park.
When the sun came out last weekend, plenty of people flocked to Toronto's lakeshore, prompting this from the city's top doctor.
I know it was a beautiful day, and I would have loved to have been outside.
There has been little research into outdoor transmission of COVID-19, but plenty of evidence suggests the virus spreads far more easily indoors.
It is more likely for us to transmit when we're having close contact over time with people in an enclosed environment.
If you are outside with the wind and potentially the rain and the sunlight and all of the various weather conditions and variables, you are at very low risk of transmission unless you are congregating in a crowd with other people.
We know that this disease is spread by the respiratory droplets that come from your nose and mouth when you in fact are sick or have an infection with COVID-19 and you're close enough to somebody that they are actually exposed.
Despite that, the overall message from Dr. Eileen Davila remains the same: stay at home.
To continue to stay the course, to continue to practice physical distancing, as challenging as it is at this time.
Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
There is a reason we put that story before your forecast, Colette, because it is going to be nice this weekend and we have to remind people about the risks.
Yeah, we certainly do, and it is going to be nice, Dwight. I've got some weather trivia for you, if I can hang on to you for just a second here. I've got a question. Oh, okay. I know. I'm putting you on the spot. Do you know which month, just the month, was the last time we had a temperature over 20 degrees? I'll give you a hint. It was also the last month we were over 30 degrees, and it was in 2019.
September? because that's when the month I was born in.
Very good guess.
Did I get it?
October.
Oh, I was so
Actually,
close.
you were so close because, and that was a very good guess, honestly, because it can often be September, but we spike quite a bit in October too. So just where am I going with this? Well, this weekend we're finally, looks like, going to get over 20 degrees again. So it's coming back. Haven't seen it since October. It was the 6th of October back in 2019. We were over 30 degrees at the beginning of that month. But look at what's happened with this month. The warmest we've been is just under 15 degrees. But just last month in March, we had a couple of days where we were at 18 degrees or warmer. And so I know we were all like, oh yeah, spring's here, spring's here. And then April kind of took a bit of a nosedive. We'll be glad to say goodbye to this month. Going into May, we're going to hit that temperature over 20 degrees. Our high for today came close to the high for the month. We're almost up to 14 degrees. It's rounded up there. One band of rain showers has pushed on. We've got another band. This is coming in over the next couple of hours here, so it is going to be wet this evening. A bit of patchy fog overnight tonight and some lingering showers tomorrow morning. The low 8 degrees. Tomorrow afternoon, we clear out 16. That's going to be good, Dwight. But that 20's coming on the weekend. I'll talk about that coming up.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. Take advantage of special offers now. It's hard to stop a train.
The race to develop a COVID-19 vaccine has been on the way for months, but experts say it will likely be a year or longer before one is ready. Chris Glover is looking at the process involved in developing the shot the whole world is now waiting on.
Imagine more than 100 teams of scientists from all over the world in the race of our lifetime. At the finish line, a vaccine to expose our immune system to the coronavirus that causes COVID-19, to prepare our antibodies for a real attack. Start to finish, a normal vaccine race can take from 5 to 10 years, but scientists hope to win this race in as little as 1 to 2 years. The teams are each in their own lane, but they aren't racing against each other, just against the virus. Scientists in China gave everyone a head start of several weeks when they published the COVID-19 genome. The first leg was also sped up because we've seen coronaviruses before. Scientists already know it uses tiny spikes to attach to and attack our cells. But they've never run this race before, so the start involves very educated guesswork. Experimenting with selecting which part of the virus will prompt our immune system to go into attack mode safely, and different methods of getting it in the body. The next leg of the race is animal testing. Different animals require specific time periods to develop a response. So depending on the species, there's no speeding this part up. Bureaucracy is a standard hurdle in vaccine races. Given the urgency, mandatory waiting periods have been knocked down in this course. The next leg of the race is human trials. This is the longest and most important part of the race. Split into 3 phases. Phase 1, the safety check. A small number of healthy people given varying doses to test side effects. There are very few research teams globally that have passed this point in the race so far. Phase 2 expands human trials to more people being tested for longer. Phase 3 of human trials is when the race really hits its stride. When effectiveness comes into play, only half of the volunteers in this phase get the vaccine, and no one knows which ones. Even sped up, the human trials alone take several months. These trials are make or break. Fail here, and you'll go back to the starting blocks. That's why having different teams of scientists experimenting in different lanes is so crucial. The last leg of the race is mass production of the safe vaccine. Cutting red tape and extra public funding can help shave off time. While we're all waiting on the sidelines for this epic race to finish, here's a sobering stat. While we've started races to create vaccines for coronaviruses before, like with SARS, we've never actually finished one. But firsts in science do happen, and right now, humanity really needs to cross this finish line. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
About 100 Ontario doctors who had hung up their scrubs and lab coats have returned to fight against the pandemic. Farmer Early spoke with some of them about coming out of retirement to help during this crisis.
There's the boxes because
on February 14th, Dr. Barb Lois Candle decided it was time to pack up her practice and retire.
after 32 years. But less than 4 weeks into her new life,
Well, the COVID crisis happened, and we thought we're still able to help people out. So we opened up our phone lines.
Lois Kendall is now picking up shifts working for telehealth. She's even offered to step in at the local hospital if needed.
So we said, if you need us at the front line, we are here to back up our fellow people.
Lois Kendall is one of many retired physicians in the province who've jumped back into medicine during the pandemic. The Canadian Medical Protective Association insures doctors. It's created a special category to expedite the process of doctors becoming members again. To date, it says 93 Ontario doctors are in that category.
The physicians that are coming out of retirement and changing their practice in order to respond is really their feeling of a call to action.
And it's not just retired doctors stepping up. According to the Ontario Medical Association, nearly 2,000 practicing physicians have signed up to be redeployed through an online app.
It's kind of like Uber for doctors, I guess, is a better way of looking at it.
BookJane matches doctors with facilities needing help during the pandemic.
That we've got someone from every specialty on there. So whether you need a family doctor, a surgeon, an internist, cardiologist.
Whether it's coming out of retirement or shifting into a different role, the decision to step in during the pandemic can be deeply personal.
I think during a crisis, we all are looking for a purpose.
Well, the moment I made the decision to explore the possibility of reactivating my license for clinical care and seeing if my former clinic could use my help, I immediately felt better.
The common sentiment, not wanting to sit on the sidelines while their peers need help.
When you have some skills and some training, like you can't just sort of sit there and twiddle your thumb while Rome burns, you got to do something.
Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto's firefighters say they are not going to be asking for a pandemic pay premium. The union representing the firefighters put out a statement last night saying the city's 3,000 professional firefighters won't ask to be included on the pandemic pay list. The Ontario government recently announced that frontline workers will receive a $4 an hour premium. The union is instead asking people to support the Toronto firefighters' charities. Toronto Fire Chief Matthew Pegg responded on Twitter saying, "There are many reasons why I am proud of our firefighters. This is one of them." And there was a bit of history at Toronto City Hall today. For the first time, City Council hosted a virtual meeting. It was the Council's first session in nearly 2 months, and they passed a few urgent initiatives in response to the pandemic. Nick Boisvert has more.
Councillor Cole, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
After a few technical glitches, which many of us can now relate to,
Councillor Holiday?
I'm trying.
Toronto City Council convened today for its first ever virtual session, which was also the municipal government's first meeting of the pandemic. Mayor John Tory expects this will be the new normal for the foreseeable future.
I am sad to say, based on expert public health evidence, that I believe it will be a while yet before we can gather together again in person.
The day's agenda was made up exclusively of motions deemed urgent by the mayor, including a proposed extension of Tory's special emergency powers. So far, he's used those to enact new physical distancing bylaws and to shut down public spaces like High Park, all without the usual council approval.
We remain committed to preventing loss of life. And doing that to the greatest extent possible.
The meeting's biggest new initiative centers on Toronto's homeless. It's a $50 million project to build hundreds of new modular homes, which could relieve stress on the city's shelter system. In London, that kind of housing looks like this. Toronto wants 110 of its own units by September and another 140 sometime next year.
Absolutely, with these modular housing units, the city should move ahead with them. They should move ahead faster, and they should build public housing on a rapid scale.
With more than 200 confirmed COVID-19 cases in Toronto's shelter system, advocates say the situation is dire and getting worse by the day.
And that's what we're seeing across the city. The number of homeless encampments are on the rise precisely because there is no space for them in Toronto's shelters. And what space exists cannot be considered safe.
Councillors also approved a plan to consider more virtual meetings, meaning the full council and even smaller committees could start meeting regularly through webcams, like this. Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
There is some data that suggests the GTA's condo rental market has dramatically reversed its course over the last month. with more landlords than tenants now, and experts say a drop in demand for Airbnb rentals may be playing a role.
So there are all sorts of ways that people were putting Airbnbs on the market, but of course that whole market has collapsed, and the people who were using them for that use all of a sudden are making no income now and can't afford the units that they have. Tenants are pulling out of the market, landlords are listing their units, and it's really created an oversupply in the short term of condo rentals right now.
Posales says he's seen a 25% increase in rental listings, while the amount of people looking to rent has decreased. Experts say condos are also being listed at a few $100s cheaper than they were a year ago, with rent prices dropping about 3.5% in April.
We're very much coming to shoulder some of the burden.
After the break, the new skills military members had to learn to help some of our most vulnerable during this pandemic. Stay with us, we'll be right back. The Red Cross is training some 400 soldiers deployed in Quebec to help out in long-term care facilities. Reservists from the Montreal area, along with troops from CFB Valcartier, are learning the basics of senior care. Simon Nakonechny explains.
I don't see.
Let's go.
That's the motto of the 5th Canadian Mechanized Brigade Group based in Valcartier. But for this mission, its soldiers are heading into unknown territory.
You know, our troops are motivated, eager, and ready, very flexible and able to adapt to most stressful situations. But they need to be prepared because this is a role that we don't normally fulfill.
That preparation means learning new non-combat skills, how to turn an elderly patient over in bed, what to do if they fall on their way to the bathroom, and especially how not to spread COVID-19. The Red Cross is teaching the 4-hour crash course in elder care at Collège Huntsic. It's a role, it says, that harkens back to the organization's roots.
Historically speaking, the Red Cross has been 160 years ago. It came from our founder, Henri Dunant, coming in a battlefield going, oh my God, we got to do something to help these people. So right now the Army and the Red Cross are putting their efforts together to face this common front that is the COVID. And these guys are just amazing.
We're very much coming to shoulder some of the burden.
After training, the troops will go to nursing homes where military medical staff are already in action. Others will help out at 8 more facilities in the Montreal area, shoring up the front lines in a conflict where the enemy has, so far, had the upper hand. Simon Akineshny, CBC News, Huntsic.
The retirement party will have to wait, but tonight, as we head to break, we want to mark the end of a 40-plus year career in policing. Today is York Region's Police Chief Eric Jolliffe's last day on the job. Chief Jolliffe was raised in Thornhill, but he moved west to get his start in policing in 1979. He served in the Edmonton Police Service for 2 years, braving some cold winters in the process. In 1981, he moved home and joined York Regional Police. He'd spend the next 39 years there. Jolliffe served in a number of roles and was involved in a number of charitable causes during his career. It all led to his appointment as chief back in 2010. When he spearheaded a move to community policing, something he says he's particularly proud of. Chief Jolliffe says he's looking forward to not being on call 24 hours a day. He plans to spend time with his wife, children, and grandchildren in retirement. This afternoon, he made it official, calling into dispatch to log off for the last time.
D1 call.
Delta 1, go ahead.
Just to let you know, I'll be logging off. Thank you very much. All the best to all the members.
Delta 1, headquarters location on Don Hillica Drive at 1438 hours. You began your career with York Regional Police in 1981, returning to the place you were born, raised, and call home. You have served in many different areas in administrative and operational roles. For the past 10 years, you have been our steadfast chief. You served in this role proudly and were the supportive face and voice of York Regional Police for a decade. This in itself is an accomplishment that only adds to your many other accomplishments, your educational pursuits, your participation in the Canadian Victims' Bill of Rights, as well as medals received for outstanding service to our citizens, community, and country. Within YRP, you have championed our Member Support Bureau and Peer Support Unit, construction of the Marine Unit, and our training facility. You also ensured our spot at the top as GTA's top 100 employers for 5 years running. Within our community, you were part of Special Olympics, Holiday Heroes, and United Way, to name a few, raising millions of dollars. You have worked tirelessly to be active in the many different communities within York Region and have been successful in your commitment of bringing people and police together. We are saddened that we could not come together as a family to wish you well in your retirement, to thank you for 41 years of policing service and your absolute dedication to the many voices of York Region. Chief, it is time for your final sign-off, to spend time with your wife, children, and grandchildren. Your Blue family will take it from here. Sir, it has been an honor and a privilege to know you, to work for you, and alongside you. Thank you for your service. We will mark you 10-7.
The union representing security guards in Ontario is asking the government to change some licensing rules. It hopes the change will allow more security guards to get hired in the face of the pandemic. Ali Kalada explains.
They're the front line of frontline workers, manning the entrances to grocery stores and hospitals. And as the pandemic continues, so does the demand for security guards.
My member agencies, they're telling me they have 1,500 jobs ready to go right now.
The uptick, according to some companies, could be as much as 10 or 20,000 jobs as the province starts to reopen. This Toronto security company says the role of officers would also change.
Their primary function would be to take temperatures, to collect health data from people, to really screen people as they re-enter buildings in the province, ensuring the best that they could that people aren't walking in symptomatic.
But meeting this current and expected demand could prove difficult. To become a security guard, you have to be licensed, passing a test at a ministry office, now closed because of the pandemic.
I think that everything can be still achieved. I think it can be done online, just like this interview is done online. You figured it out, and I think that the government can figure this testing out.
Another option, says this company, is to temporarily delay the licensing requirement.
The ability to put these people to work without a credential, without a license at this point, because we know that the ministry is going to be inundated.
In a statement, the Department of the Solicitor General said training and testing requirements maintain public safety, and as such, all training and testing requirements remain mandatory, and no exemptions may be made at this time.
Being a security guard is more than just putting on a uniform. You have to understand the different levels of law, municipal, federal, provincial.
There are currently over 90,000 licensed security guards in Ontario. Natalie Kalada, CBC News, Toronto.
York Regional Police releasing a photo today of a man they want to speak to in connection with an arson at the Buttonville Airport. A private jet was found engulfed in flames outside a hangar at the airport back in February. Police say the fire was intentionally started. Investigators want to speak with the man captured on surveillance camera. They say he may have information that can assist the investigation. In Alberta, floodwaters are creating misery in parts of Fort McMurray, and re-entry plans are being made for people who have been forced from their homes.
The water hasn't reached my house yet, but the basement's flooded. It's coming up through the drains.
More than 1,200 homes and businesses are affected in downtown Fort Mac. Uptown has not seen as much damage. Re-entry plans will involve ensuring safety of power and gas line connections, and officials say people who have been relocated to hotels and oil sands work camps will likely be there for another week. They add COVID-19 precautions are being followed in the camps and densely populated areas. And the pictures out of there today, call it just unbelievable, looking at those homes submerged.
Yes, such challenging times there, Dwight, and we look to the weather to see what the pattern is right now in terms of anything that could exacerbate the situation there. And just having a look at the radar, now some of the returns not as good here as we get into northern Alberta, but you can see a little bit of light precipitation in the area. Okay, well that seems like, all right, not too heavy. However, looking at the atmospheric dynamics here, there is the chance of seeing some thunderstorm activity, so some embedded storms in there. That risk is there tonight, tomorrow, and even tomorrow night. So really for the next 24 hours, obviously that would be kind of the worst case scenario, because in a thunderstorm you can get very heavy downpours in a very short period of time. So that risk's there, but get to Saturday and then things really improve, and for several days, giving that water a chance to recede. Back here at home, speaking of the wet weather, we have some overnight showers still around for sure. A little bit of patchy fog developing as well. We'll get into clearing though tomorrow by the lunch hour and into the afternoon. Lots of sunshine, and that'll help that temperature to warm up, and it's really going to be warming up as we get into the weekend. But just showing you our radar images. So, okay, some of the heavier rain from earlier, we got into this nice dry slot here there. The sun came out, and that feels good. The temperature came up a few degrees, but you can see that rotation with this area of low pressure that is still such a slow mover, bringing back in some showers here over the next few hours, and then we'll get breaks again, and then there could still be a little bit of isolated shower activity even tonight and tomorrow morning lingering until we can kick that right out of here. Good riddance. We'll leave that one quite happily behind. But as we go into Friday night and Saturday, what happens is we're clear there. We're clear for Saturday morning, so sunshine to begin the day, and then the next system rotates in, and so we'll get into some cloud cover through much of the latter part of Saturday. A risk of showers, but I'm keeping that to Saturday night into Sunday morning. So through the overnight hours, daytime Sunday, in fact, we're going to see things clearing out and the sun coming back to us then. So lots of places during this weekend where there's going to be fair weather, that's for sure. Overnight tonight, these are your overnight lows, very mild at 8 degrees. Tomorrow, wherever you get into the sun a little sooner, you see the temperature comes up. For St. Catharines, going to be a little slower to clear there, and that's why I kept the temperature down just a little bit for your afternoon high. But into Saturday, there we go. Clouds come in into the afternoon, sunny in the morning, 18 degrees, few showers possible, just some sprinkles, and then into Sunday, there it is, 21 degrees, as I was saying earlier in the show, Dwight. That hasn't happened since last October, so that will be very welcome.
Looks like we lose it pretty quickly there, though. Thanks, Colette.
Oh, you had to look at Monday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Canada Post workers spent part of today thanking frontline workers driving by hospitals and a long-term care home out in Scarborough. Postal workers showed their support for doctors, nurses, support workers, cleaners, and staff who are fighting COVID-19. About 100 vehicles drove by Scarborough Centenary Hospital and Scarborough Grace Hospital today. The group also went by Seven Oaks Long-Term Care Facility, a home that has been a hotspot for the virus. The workers wanted to show healthcare workers that they appreciate all that they are doing.
We're a frontline service ourselves. We're deemed an essential service. We deliver mail every day, and we're out there every day. But I feel that the frontline workers, the real frontline workers that put their health at risk, are the healthcare workers. And we got to show some solidarity with the healthcare workers and show them that we support them 100%, and we thank them for everything that they're doing.
Richmond says he hopes that frontline workers continue to feel supported and united throughout this pandemic.
By blocking the virus from replicating, you can hopefully prevent the virus from infecting more cells. So by blocking this pathway, it's presumed to really help people recover.
Could a drug that treats Ebola help people with COVID-19? We ask an expert next. Health officials in the U.S. are expected to issue emergency approval for a drug called Remdesivir. The experimental antiviral drug might help fight the coronavirus. The news was announced by U.S. infectious disease official Dr. Anthony Fauci yesterday at the White House.
The data shows that remdesivir has a clear-cut, significant positive effect in diminishing the time to recovery. This is really quite important for a number of reasons, and I'll give you the data. It's highly significant.
Remdesivir was originally formulated to treat Ebola, but didn't work. Early trials with coronavirus patients show the drug may help speed up recovery time for the sickest patients. It reduced recovery time from 15 days to 11. The drug may also reduce the chances of a patient dying from the coronavirus. It is not yet approved for wide use here in Canada. Now, while this represents positive news in the fight against COVID-19, there are still lots of concerns. Dr. Isaac Bogach is an infectious disease specialist at Toronto General Hospital. We asked him what we need to know about this drug and also how it works.
It basically blocks how the virus is replicating in a person. And by blocking the virus from replicating, you can hopefully prevent the virus from infecting more cells and causing more damage in the body and causing more inflammation. So by blocking this pathway, it's presumed to really help people recover. Firstly, just taking a step back, it's kind of unusual. We are in unprecedented times, and I appreciate that information has to be shared rapidly. But usually, when we're sharing information like this, we have access to the data. It's usually peer-reviewed and published in a high-impact, high-profile journal, and then people who practice medicine and scientists get to look at all the data. And usually, we mull it over and think, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and figure out a way to integrate this in our practice. We don't really know how much went into this. We don't have all the data available to us. But the things that struck me was that he said, this was significant in that it decreased the length of stay of sick people in hospital to 11 days from about 15 days on average, and that was statistically significant. The other thing that he said was that there was a trend. It wasn't statistically significant, but there was a trend towards a lower mortality, lower probability of death in people who received this drug to about 8% compared to people who got a placebo. They had about an 11% chance of death. And it wasn't statistically significant because they stopped the study. They couldn't continue enrolling people. The other thing that stood out was that the study was actually stopped early, and it was stopped early by what's called a Data Safety Monitoring Board, the DSMB. This is a completely independent group of people that monitor the study. They have no vested interest whether the drug works or not. They have no financial interest. And they stopped the study because they felt there was an ethical obligation to people who were in the placebo group because the drug was showing some statistically significant benefit. So those are the things that stood out to me. I'm worried about what this is going to do between now and between when we actually have access to all the data, which won't actually be very long. But all we have is some shreds of information, and we haven't really had time as a medical and scientific community to really look at the data and discuss it. Usually what happens is we look at the data, we discuss it as a community, we come up with some consensus, we come up with our individual opinions, but they're evidence-based and data-driven opinions. We can look at the strengths and the weakness of the strengths and weaknesses of the study and figure out how are we going to integrate this into our clinical practice. But of course, I'm not knocking Dr. Anthony Fauci. I appreciate that there is an ethical obligation to report these findings in real time. It just puts us in a very difficult situation when we have one of the world's most high-profile physicians saying this will be the standard of care. So I think it's time to be excited about this, and it's very reasonable. But on the other hand, I kind of want to temper that excitement because many of us in the medical and scientific community want to actually see the data first and figure out, how good is it and how do we integrate this into our daily care of patients with COVID-19.
After the break, today's frontline hero. Stick around for that. We'll be right back. Our medical professionals are dealing with new challenges each day, but a group of volunteers wanted to ensure getting groceries wouldn't be one of them. They started Grocery Hero about a month ago, and so far, about 5,600 people from across the country have signed up.
Grocery Hero is a free delivery matching service to help frontline medical workers focus on fighting COVID-19. We do that by matching frontline medical workers with a volunteer grocery shopper in their neighborhood. 4 friends and I started Grocery Hero because each of us has family and friends working as medical professionals. We heard for weeks that grocery delivery services are oversubscribed, and at the same time, they don't want to go into grocery stores and risk exposing the public. So we started doing grocery runs as a small way of helping out, but heard that the problem was getting worse, and at the same time, thought that a lot of others would be interested in helping out their neighbors in the same way. And that's how the idea was born. Over a weekend, we built out a platform using simple tools like Google Forms to pair up medical professionals with volunteer shoppers in their neighborhood. We tried to make it as simple as possible. Once introduced, the medical professional and volunteer shopper communicate with each other directly to arrange availability, a shopping list, and reimbursement for the cost of goods only. The delivery is free and out of the goodness of volunteers' hearts. The best case scenario is that the two develop an ongoing shopping arrangement and don't need to use the platform anymore.
Thank you for everything you're doing, Grocery Hero. If you would like to share a story about your frontline hero, send us a selfie-style video explaining why they are a hero to you. Tag us on Instagram or Twitter at CBC Toronto. Send us a message on Facebook or email us, torontotips@cbc.ca. Colette, we had a really cute dog story to throw to you with, but James, the producer, he just pulled it. I'm sorry.
What?
I'm sorry. You can talk to him after the show.
Hey, we got tomorrow. It's all right, James. Let me show you what's going on here. We've got about, just an hour and 15-ish minutes left of daylight in that neighborhood anyway. And we're in this dry slot, not for long though. It's allowed a little sunshine to come in, 16 in St. Catharines, 14 Toronto. But Hamilton, yeah, the shower's right on your doorstep here. So this is that system that's really taken a lot of patience for us to deal with. We do get into these dry spots and we get some sunshine, and then, yeah, this is what's coming back in again. So the main rain is off to the east, that thicker band, but these showers now pushing in there on your doorstep, coming through Hamilton, pressing towards you there in Oakville, moving past Kitchener as well, and these will be tracking on into the GTA. So the next few hours, still some showers. We'll get a break again, and then we keep some of this instability tonight and tomorrow morning. And along with that, some patchy fog is certainly possible for tonight as well. So as we go into the evening hours, coming down a few more degrees, 10. Winds out of the southeast are going to shift around to the northwest. So overnight tonight, that 8 degrees, the wind's not quite enough to mix the atmosphere. That's why we may see these little pockets with a bit of that fog. And then for tomorrow, just know that in the morning, yes, it may seem a little gloomy, but we do clear into the afternoon. After lunch, we get into the sunshine, 16 degrees. It's going to be a nice Friday afternoon, Dwight, and a nice way to go into the weekend.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
That is our show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. Mike Wise has your next local news tonight after the National at 11. We will see you back here tomorrow at 6. Have a great night, everybody, and please stay safe.